And good morning, world. It's Wednesday, the 9th of May 2018. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning, UK time. So, once again, as a result of last night's political developments in the world, I find myself looking at the horoscope of Donald Trump. Now, I've deliberately not done this in a series of political leaders, basically because every time I mention Donald Trump, I get trolled. But as an astrologer, I can't ignore the fact that at the moment he's one of the most controversial figures in current human history. Therefore, as an astrologer, I have to look at him. I will be removing any comments that come in on this video that are in any way abusive or what I consider abusive. So, the records of Donald Trump, his birth data is easily available. Check out any of my last videos. I'm not looking at that. Instead, I'm looking at what's coming up for him, medium term, long term, and short term. Now, the progressed sun in his horoscope, I'm not worried about. But I'm looking at the long term of his chart. And I'm particularly looking towards the end of his reign, towards the end of his time in office. In 2020, Pluto in the sky will be opposite his Saturn. In 2021, Pluto in the sky will be opposite his Venus, and Neptune in the sky will be squaring both his Sun and his Moon. Now, if I were advising a client with these patterns, I would be saying particularly that during 2021, this is a time when I would expect him to be going through a year-long period of fatigue, weariness, confusion, tiredness, even gullibility, deception or avoidance. That is still 3 years away, by which time the next presidential election will have occurred, and the likelihood is that he will not be in office unless he runs and wins for a second term. And if he does so, I would strongly advise him against it. I don't think his physical, let alone mental or emotional health is going to be able to sustain it, particularly with Neptune squaring his Sun and his Moon. I would be telling any client that that is a year that they need to retreat from the world and step back. And with Pluto opposite his Venus at the same time, it gives me cause for concern over his value systems and his ability to be able to trust people around him, particularly in close personal relationships. I'm not worried by what Uranus is doing to Donald Trump. All of this year it's trining his ascendant, and it doesn't seem to be challenging him. Certainly the stuff that's coming up in the next couple of weeks isn't challenging him. And then we come to Saturn. In a year and a half's time, just as he's getting ready to run for office, Saturn will start a long time opposition to his Saturn and his Venus in 2020. I can't see him standing for office again. And I do suspect that as he gets to the end of his tenure in office, his popularity levels are going to seriously slump. In his horoscope, he has a strong square from Mercury at 8 degrees of Cancer to Neptune at 5 degrees of Libra. If I were talking to any client and try and explaining that in their horoscope, I would say it does give them occasional periods of having warped judgment, that they were not so much a creature of logic, rationality and analysis as much more a creature of intuition, imagination and feeling. But with a Mercury square Neptune, then I would also say to them that fantasy lives between the ears, whilst the imagination can be created. Now, as we speak, Saturn in the sky is opposite his Mercury and squaring his Neptune. This leads me to assume that with Saturn opposite his Mercury, that he's being pushed into trying to become ever more structured in the way he thinks. But with the square to Neptune, that isn't going to be working. So I do suspect that in many ways his view of the world is not the reality, and that His way of seeing the world is different to the majority of people around him. It's also interesting to note that just in this last month or so, the progressed moon in his horoscope has been conjuncting both progressed Pluto and progressed Mercury. At the moment, progressed moon, progressed Mercury, progressed Pluto, all together around 13, 14 degrees of Leo. Might makes right, bull in a china shop, my way or no way. Moon, Mercury, Pluto together is indomitable. It doesn't compromise. It's not willing to listen. It's going to be my way. And again, I would be saying this to anyone with this position. Jupiter is coming up to square Donald Trump's ascendant and Mars and oppose his midheaven around October of this year. And I suspect that as the midterm elections come about in November, so in October, in late October, you'll see him go on a kind of media blitz, talking about homeland, with Jupiter moving into his fourth house. Again, in 2 years' time, Jupiter will be in Capricorn, and it'll be opposite a lot of his stuff. Next year, Jupiter is going to be spending 9 months, 8 or 9 months, conjuncting his moon and opposite his sun from February of next year onwards. So I do anticipate next year to be more of the same. Outgoing, controversial, larger than life. I'm well aware that a number of people have got a great deal of time and respect for Donald Trump, and I'm not going to criticise their opinions. They're entitled to them. But he has managed to alienate most of the Western world now. And if what he said last night in his speech, that he's going to impose really harsh sanctions not only on Iran but on any country that is still trading with Iran, then that means he's going to impose sanctions on Britain, Germany, France, Australia, China, Russia. Good luck with that. I think at the moment the main factor in his horoscope is Saturn opposite his Neptune. Saturn's opposite his Mercury and squaring his Neptune. This is going to be sticking around until October, just as Jupiter squares his Sun and Moon. There's not going to be a great deal of change here in the short term. The eclipses that are coming up in July, and incidentally, the eclipse of the Sun on the 11th of August 2018, 19 years to the day after the total eclipse of the Sun on the 11th of August 1999, it's going to see a few world leaders fall and change significantly over the next few weeks. Meantime, Trump is sending off his Secretary of State to Korea, and let's hope that that works. Let's hope that the world ends up in a nuclear-free option. But there is, there's other people with nuclear weapons as well. It's not just America, France, Russia, China, Britain. Israel has nuclear weapons as well. And you don't hear much about that these days. He will remain a divisive and controversial figure. He's never going to be the most popular person in the world. And the lovers will love him and the haters will hate him. And in the long run, I think he's actually splitting America in half. And I don't know that the divide can ever be healed again by a political figure from one of the established parties. So it may be that what we're actually seeing here is the demise of the American political system. I hope not. America's a beautiful country. I love the country. I love the people there. They've been so helpful to me in my life. And I truly wish the best for it. But at the moment, America seems to be going to the dogs. Perhaps it's time for a look at the horoscope of America at some stage in the near future. Meantime, Moon's in Pisces, Mercury's a few degrees away from Uranus, Mars is square Uranus by 2.5 degrees, tempo's ratcheting up, the big change is coming imminently, 13th, 14th, 15th of this month. Watch this space, back onto the treadmill with Mars, Uranus, Mercury, Taurus, all that stuff tomorrow. Have a great day, folks. Bye.